Welcome to Badaboom. On this episode of the podcast, we have on Pornsak Pichetshote and Jesse Lonergan, the writer-artist duo behind Boom Studios' Man's Best, a homeward-bound story featuring emotional support animals in space. Pichetchote talks about how the story is a change of pace from the worlds of the Good Asian and Infidel. Eisner-nominated Lonergan also reflects on the journey of Man's Best and the collaboration with Pichetchote and Boom. Listen in and bada boom. Hey guys, how you doing?
Hey.
Good. How are you?
Good, good. So excited to have you both on. You guys have a really exciting project coming up. So why don't you tell the people about it?
Yeah, it's called Man's Best. It's Homeward Bound in Space. It's about three emotional support animals who get stranded on an alien island and have to rescue their human crew from sci-fi sort of dangers and aliens and all that kind of stuff. And most importantly, it's me working with Jesse Lonergan, who I've been like into this enormous fan of for a very long. It's one of the few times where I actually have I have evidence on record that like I've been posting about it and stuff ever since like Hedra. So I can always like if anyone ever says, if Jesse ever says I'm playing for the camera, I can like point him back to Instagram to like the post when Hedra came out about how much I love that comic.
Yeah.
So
and
I get
you
to work
can have
with
the
Jesse
archives of your stories, sharing his posts and stuff like
that. Yeah.
Just trying to make me feel uncomfortable right off the bat. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's great to work with Pornsak. It's a story that sort of like Pornsak had the story and went to Boom with it, and Boom came to me with it. And so it was a lot of like exciting just to sort of be like here, here's this outline and stuff, and sort of to get to like hop on and have fun.
And just to give our editor Eric Harburn full credit, and to embarrass Jesse further, like Eric was the one who thought of Jesse, because I never, like, after reading Hedra, I never in a million years did I think that Jesse was interested in like working with another writer. So I remember when Eric brought up his name, I was just like, yeah, but why would he look at what he does? He's already done. Like, why would he want to add another person?
I feel like
that?
people, like writers, don't see Hedra and be like, yeah, I'll write for this guy. I think they're like, yeah, let that guy do his own little weird thing in his little corner.
We see Hedra, and we're just like, why does he want to bother? Why does he want to throw anybody else in this mix? It's already working so well.
That's awesome.
But the book is also. Oh, so go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead. No, you're talking about the book. So
okay.
Relevant.
No, but the book very much is sort of about it's about those. It asks sort of the question, sort of like those creatures, those cats and dogs and pets that we go to when we're depressed for hope and inspiration. Like, where do they go when they need hope and inspiration, where everything seems so dire? And it's really about it's very different from what I normally do. I usually write about dark things that depress people, and so now I get to not write about that, and I get to work with Jesse in the process.
Awesome. Yeah. That's great, because I think I was going to ask, and you kind of answered that, like it's great that your editor like brought you together, because it seems like the perfect fit for Jesse's like artwork, where you're like, when I first saw the cover, I was like, oh my god, this is perfect. And I think especially now, like in a world like post like Stray Dogs, you're able to use like animals and tell these like little bit more adult stories, and I think there's an appetite for it. So like, what's it been like, sort of like, how far along are you guys? Are you guys like deep into like issue 3, 4 already? Like, what's the collaboration process been like?
You want to go first, Jesse?
Yeah, I'm penciling and inking issue 4 right now. So hopefully I'll finish that in the next week or so, and then color, and then issue 5. So I guess I'm pretty deep in it. It feels like I've been drawing dogs and cats for a really long time, which is sort of funny, because I think of them as sort of like being a little difficult to draw, and all of a sudden it's like I've drawn these faces so many times.
Do you still consider them difficult to draw now that you've drawn so many? Or you're just like, dogs and cats, I can do dogs and cats all day now? I mean, not that you would want to, I guess, after drawing them for so long.
I feel like my art's sort of like a little bit of an in between. Like you mentioned, like Stray Dogs, and then it's like Stray Dogs to me, I see like a big sort of Disney sort of stylized look, and I'm not that cartoony. Like, not that I'm super realistic, but like making a golden retriever like grimace making them like express like disappointment in like in a dog face or a cat face can be a little bit of a challenge because it's like they really don't have those
Yeah.
expressions. Like golden retrievers actually do smile, but French bulldogs definitely don't.
Right. Yeah.
They just have this like weird frown face. So occasionally, like getting like the expressions sort of
Mm.
to work can be a little bit of a challenge. But I feel like there used to be like a little thing of like, how does a dog's back leg work or something? And it's like, I know how a dog's. I've like my Google search history of like French bulldog, golden retriever, like running, sitting, lying down, standing up, jumping. Like I've kind of gone through, and I'm pretty comfortable drawing dogs and cats now.
Yeah. And
It's
on
also
my end,
totally skewed all my advertisements. It's like, oh,
oh my God, I love it.
All
like you
dog
want some
food
pet
snacks.
food? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you need kitty litter? It's like, no,
That's
no,
awesome.
I'm good.
Yeah, it's funny. I think, and again, it's much to editor Eric Harburn's credit. Like Eric was the first one who kind of noticed it. Like, oh wait, when Jesse does comics, it's all this like a sci-fi stuff. But if you go to his Instagram, it's all this like animal culture stuff. It's like he's never done both in a comic. I think this could be the comic where he does both. And we're just like, oh my God, that's totally right. Like this is awesome. We get to be the people who crack this code.
Yeah, well, it's sort of like, like when you talk about like working with a writer, one of like the things that like I have is like I have my ideas, and they're
Yeah.
like there's sort of just like this natural limit of like you think the way you think, and
Yeah.
like and so to like be working with like a writer in Pornsak where it's like, oh, these are totally different ideas, this is like a different way of going about things, but it's allowing me like artistically to do something, and also like not to have to worry, and sort of like he's got the plot, like like he's figured that out, and so it's like I just get to have fun and sort of play with stuff that I don't think I would do on my own. And it's nice to find like a place for cute animals and stuff, and mech suits for cats.
Yeah, I mean, and Jesse's designs for all this stuff has been amazing. We've got we've got a mech suit for a cat. We've got a French bulldog with a rocket pack. We've got a bionic golden retriever. Like I've loved everything that he's done for all of this stuff. And a lot of it too is like it's always great and fun working with somebody else. As like Jesse says, like the script might take him in places that he might normally go, but on my end, like I definitely working differently than I ever have on this book. And so much of where it comes from is me looking at like what Jesse does and sort of being like, oh well, how I love when he does this. How can we get more of that into this book? How can I give him the freedom to do that and the agency to do that? So it's part of, when you work with someone as singular, sort of as Jesse, part of the fun in working at comics is just like, okay, how do I shift myself and how do I get out of my own way so I can kind of let him do what he does?
Yeah, that's awesome. And like I think what was really exciting about like the announcement of the book is like Troy and I were big fans of the Good Asian, and we were like, oh, this is completely different. And I think there's something about like comics where I feel like it's always good you can explore these things. You know what I mean? You could have people that, you like dream teams, you guys, like come together that you're like, oh, I didn't quite see that, come together, but and it allows you to explore different things. So what's it been like to kind of scratch that itch of sort of, like you're known for, those Dead Boy Detectives and the Good Asian and things that are like pretty dark and serious, but I'm sure this is serious, but you get to kind of be a little bit lighter, and highlight something that I think we all do. I think even if you don't have an emotional support animal, legally, like, hey, our pets are our family, you know what I mean? They're almost empaths, so what's it like to kind of tell this story and go in a different direction than you're used to?
I mean, it's great. It's great. It's also like terrifying. I mean, I feel like all my books terrify me in like different ways. So like, one of the things that comics allows you more so than I think other media really is, and other media is that you can kind of play around with different genres. Like I have like in my bookshelf, I'm weird, and so I list all my books out by genre. And so when people come over, they're like, "There's a rhyme or reason to this, but I don't understand." And then we don't have to get into this, but it goes even crazier where like it's like in chronological order. It's like it's just weird. And then and so people don't look at my and there's like this looks like it's in some kind of sense, but I can't quite crack it. But I realized really quickly, like, you can't do that with comic book writers. Like, comic book writers, they've got their horror book, they've got their fantasy book, they've got their sci-fi book, and most prose writers, certainly, and you'll hear about this from prose writers. Once they do a book in a particular genre, they're kind of like trapped in that genre. It's a big like effort to break out of it. And one of the cool things I think about comic book writers is like all my favorite writers, I have a shelf dedicated to just all my favorite comic book writers, not because they're comic book writers, but just because every book goes so crazy in genres that like I can't place them in my bookshelf otherwise. And so I always like that in the comic book writers that I sort of admire. And so I wanted to do something really, really different. And that's part of the, the fear of it is that it's very, very different. And I can't rely on any of my old tricks, and I can't rely on any of my old tricks. And so there's this fear that like people will very easily be able to see that you don't know what you're doing once you've thrown away the last bag of tricks that you use. But I guess the other flip side of it is that I get to save up all these tricks for one book as opposed to have to string them out through a career of 3 years or something like that. Yeah. So I guess that's a plus side. But it's terrifying. It's terrifying. Yeah, I'm constantly wondering, does this work? Does this joke land? Maybe it doesn't. Am I actually funny? Like all these kind of like things that I don't have to worry about when I'm writing a book about racism. So
when I heard you were doing this book, and like Chris was like, yeah, it's about pets and they're in space, and I was like, oh, it's probably going to be about someone like losing an animal that's really close to them. And like, man, people are going to be devastated. Everyone on the crew and the ship are going to be like a funeral, and, it's going to be emotional and everything. And I read a little expert about like, there's a huge aspect of friendship to it. And then I see your artwork and I was like, why is this the opposite of depression? This looks like it's going to be a very comforting tale and, a very fun adventure. Like there's definitely some Disney vibes and Homeward Bound from it. So I was like, I have no idea what to expect. And for 5 issues, how are they going to have what I think of when I think of Pornsak together? But also like, it's just two opposites put together. I mean, I think it's going to be great, but like, I'm sure that's got to have been a challenge of like, how, like you said, you got all these bags of tricks from your other books. Was like, how am I going to make it work with a completely different story about pets?
I mean, I think it is like definitely like a brighter book maybe than Pornsak has done before. But I think it's got some weight to it as well. Like it's not like it's all of a sudden just like a madcap, adventure. Like it's not like switching to like a sitcom or anything. Like there's like a serious to it, like the friendships between them, like the testing and stuff that goes on, and like the realizations about themselves. Like it has that stuff on it. I don't think it's going to be super depressing. Like I maybe we'll see. Maybe it'll be depressing for us.
Yeah, exactly. When we go
so hard.
But yeah, no, but to that point, like it does have, I mean, I think you'll be able I mean, it's still written by me, so you'll be able to see, some through lines sort of pulled through. There is, the kind of themes of sort of family and found family that I think you can find in all of this. There is my usual wording about the state of the world that you can find through apparently all of my work. But I think back to the sort of the more emotional sort of meaty stuff. I mean, even though it is it's about talking animals, it's Homeward Bound, it's playful, it's got a bunch of crazy ideas. It is very much, for me anyway, this was a book that kind of came out sort of. This book wouldn't have come out if it wasn't for the pandemic. And for multiple reasons. It was during the pandemics that I saw all my friends get emotional support animals and get that. And it's in Chris, going back to what you were saying earlier, like it's interesting to me because like the line, there was an interview question that's like, how much did you look into emotional support animals and And I've actually found out when I was doing an interview with someone else, and one of the things I had realized was the line between a formal emotional support animal and of just a pet, I feel like is completely out the window now. Like specifically in my building. So my building before the pandemic didn't allow pets, but with the pandemic, they said like we will allow cats for emotional support animals. there are cats all over this place now. And like, are they emotional support animals? Are there pets? But like, also, what's really the difference at this point? You know, like, is there a legal like definition of what constitutes an emotional support animal and what constitutes a pet? All I know is after the pandemic, like every pet became an emotional support animal, and everyone brought emotional support animals in their lives and seemed to be treating them like pets. So like, I don't really know what the difference is, and because of all that, for me, it was very much about just like, you know, you have three characters sort of in not like the lap of luxury, but in comfort, and they're best friends. And then tragedy happens, and then crisis happens, and then what happens to friendships during crisis, and to what degree this friendship that you think is sort of like this bond that's inseparable, when you're being tested with all these huge stakes of what I believe versus what you believe, how can you hold these sort of friendships together? And that very much is sort of the more serious emotional core of what it is, even though it still has this very, you know, it's about talking, you know, it's about a dog in a rocket pack and a cat in a mech suit and all that kind of stuff. But still, at the end of the day, is it's very much kind of looking at the world. I think all my work tries to do this, is sort of look at the world where it is now. And it's just like, it is, you know, I wake up and I feel like I see a world under crisis. And what does it do to our relationships? What does it do to our friendships? And how do we hold on to them, like, despite all of that?
Yeah. I mean, like, I think those are really good points. You know, as I was saying earlier, like, again, like, even if legally it's not your emotional support animal, you have that sort of connection with them and stuff like that. And I see that through, you know, through my son. Like, my mom has a bird, and he's like always like, there's something about that bird that like he just like connects with. Like, literally, some days he'd be like, all right, we're going to Grandma and JoJo's house now, like just to see you know, the parrot. So I think it's a unique sort of place to kind of tell that kind of story, like people's relationship with the world, people's relationship with animals, and kind of where people are at. And, you know, I'm really excited to read it. But for you, Jesse, like, what was the challenge for you? I know you're talking about how, you know, drawing cats and dogs are a little easier now, you know. And it reminded me, I was at a panel once with Todd Knock, and he was like, I could draw Spider-Man in my sleep sometimes. He like wakes up and he draws like Peter Parker. But like, for you, like, what's it been like working with Pornsak? Was there something that you kind of took away in terms of like storytelling that and like what kind of challenges you ran into?
I'm not sure about like, I don't know, putting it, things that I took away from this experience, like, puts a lot of weight on it. Like, oh, how is this going to affect things? And I don't know. I think like some of the things that it is like, I feel like what he sort of provided in the story, and this is going to get weird because I'm me, but it's like there's this sort of like constant movement within the story, like there's no set like we go back to, you know, like there's like, it's not like New York, like it's like, no, that was there was, we had that and then that's gone and that's gone. And I feel so it forces sort of this like artistic narrative as well, of like, okay, well, you did that here and now you need to do something else here. It's like the bag of tricks. It's like, okay, you used that trick, like we're never going to go back there again. And sort of this like constant sort of like evolution artistically as it goes on. That's sort of very like, I think it's good for the story, but it's also sort of challenging. Like I'm in issue 4 and I had to draw a flashback, and it's like, wow, I've gone through all these settings and like shown different ways of showing things and like done sort of more formalist things. It's like, how am I going to do this flashback? Like, so it feels like it's a continuation of this sort of forward movement. So I don't know. It's that sort of like using the narrative to keep the art evolving as it goes. I think has been sort of one of the like most like biggest impact on me. It's like using. I don't think much about story that much on my own. Like, I'm very artistically driven, and so like using the story, of course, bringing it back to like as a tool to drive the art. But like that sort of like way of thinking about something that's like it's always progressing forward. I don't think I'm doing a good job saying it because that seems really basic. That a story should progress. But like
no, but I
that sort
get
of
what you mean.
evolving aspect with the narrative. in terms of how it is represented visually. Something that's been like a challenge, and also something I think I'll try to keep incorporating.
But bouncing off what Jesse is saying for a second, because I do sort of, I think like going back to what I was saying earlier, like one of the benefits you get from going to different genres is that sort of just like, oh, I don't know when I'm going to come back to this genre. So there's a little bit of like everything in the kitchen sink is like every trick I can thematically work into this thing, I will try to do. And I do think there's a little bit for me with working with Jesse, like, I don't know when the next time I'm working with Jesse is. So anything I want Jesse to draw, this is my chance. I got to figure out how to make it work into the story. And so I totally see how like that, what it's like receiving that on the other end.
Well, there's definitely things where I'm like, oh, wow, I wish he hadn't said exploded view, because I know how I'm going to respond to someone saying exploded view. It's like, okay, we're going to like do this all in perspective. We're going to actually like figure out like what a car is like when it's exploded, like, you know, and breaking down all these pieces and stuff and spend 3 days on it or something. Yeah, there's been this, like I feel like it's been good. Like he writes stuff that sort of like pushes me to go further artistically than I feel like probably most artists, like when they write for themselves, they're like, I'm gonna take a little break on this page. Like this will be in, I know this will look cool and it won't be very hard. Like but I feel like with like the script, it's like I haven't really had that like sit back and relax sort of like just do an easy page aspect. I don't know if I should say that out loud. But there are easy pages and there are hard pages.
This is the first time I've actually written a script where and again, being a writer, I feel like you always hear writers say, like, I just want to draw this, like, I want to write this so it's easy for the artist to draw. And meanwhile, you hear the artist goes, it took me like a month to do that as 5 pages. But certainly the theory was, because I know that like certain scenes, I'm like, I know there's no way Jesse will do the easy version, the simple version of that. Like, I know he will just go, okay. So let me try to give him sort of scenes that will offset that balance sort of somehow. And I've never done that for another artist, but it's just because I know especially as the pages come in, I know how far Jesse is going to take things. Let's try not to break him, and let's try to give him something else that maybe in my writer's brain doesn't feel like as big as hard. And I'm sure, like, you know, in a week I'll find out it's like, oh no, that was way tougher than the exploded view.
No, I think the exploded views, that's going to be like the number 1 thing. That was like the longest single drawing. No, I mean, some drawing
took him a month
to be the
to
longest
finish.
drawing. No, 2.5 days.
Yeah, we had on Jeremy Adams, and he kind of said the same thing for when he's writing. He's like, my artist is so good, if I don't tell him this needs to only have like this number of panels per page, it's gonna just take his entire day, like 3 or 4 days, and he's gonna draw something really amazing, just how Jesse is. But then it's gonna be like, man, I need to limit the panels, because otherwise 5 pages are gonna be great and all the pages are gonna be great, but like we may not get this out on time because he wants to put so much stuff into these beautiful Green Lantern panels.
Yeah, it's one of the great things working with Jesse. Well, one of the great things where one, we're so far ahead, but then 2, like Jesse loves to sort of break things out and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
so
there's never a shortage of panels. I feel like Pornsak writes 5, and I'm like 6, 7, 8, 9. Like, adding panels for me, like, it's just like no big deal. It's just like, and sometimes it makes it easier to draw. Like, you know, if it's 2 panels can be easier than 1 panel sometimes.
Part of the process that we have on this was unique, and me and Jesse talked about in advance, because I think something that is so distinct about Jesse's art is his rhythm, is his storytelling rhythm, the panels that he breaks things down. So we have this thing, or I set this thing up for myself, which was a really interesting challenge for myself as a writer, and I'm definitely bringing it on to other things, where it's just like I think I cheated once, but like every page is 5 panels, every action sequence is 4 panels. And then from there, but it's done with Jesse's like, add as many as you want. But then it comes down to me, it's just like, normally with my own like instincts, I might break this up into a close up here. It's like, oh, I can't do that here. Let's see if Jesse wants a close up there, and just break it down to those 5 in order to get the sequence done, and we kind of go from there.
Yeah, except the exploding view, page.
Yeah. well, that you could just say splash, and then and it still passes the rule that it takes so much longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And I think what's really exciting about hearing you guys talk about it is you brought up Pornsak, like the idea of like you never know when you're going to be able to do something like this again.
Yeah.
I think so. Sometimes you do see like. And I think this is in every medium, but like people like kind of holding out. You're like, hey, like, are you holding this off for like a movie or something like that? And it's like sometimes it's like, hey, like this is a comic book, have fun, like put everything in it, And I think,
I think about like I mean, there's a lot of problems with Woody Allen movies, and we can talk about all the problems with Woody Allen. But I remember those early Woody Allen movies. Like I remember when I discovered Annie Hall, and Annie Hall just felt like it had everything he wanted to do, because it was his first drama and coming off of comedies, and you had everything he wanted to do in there. And as good as his later movies would be, there was definitely a difference between Annie Hall and when he knew he was directing and writing a movie a year. There's a different feel to his movie. I think, I used to be a fan, not as much as anymore. I used to be a fan of Adam Sandler movies. And I think there's a difference between Billy Madison, which was his first movie, and he was just like, I just got to throw, I don't know if anyone's ever going to give me a chance. And then from the second movie on, you realize, oh, no, I'm going to get it on. I should like pace myself a little bit. And I kind of love those first movies where people are just like, I don't know when else I'm going to do this. I'm just, again, and with comics, you always have to be careful, because I think one of the common problems with comics is like people overcomplicate things and add too much sort of stuff in there. So you always want to have a little self-discipline. But I always love those pieces where it just feels like the creator doesn't feel like they don't know when they're going to get a chance to do this again. It just goes all out. And that's what an opportunity
it's like
I have with Jesse.
Holy Grail. Like Monty Python. It's just like, no, we're putting jokes in like every line. Like the credits have jokes. Like the credits have jokes in the credits, and then there's subtitles for the credits of like, and like it's just like so dense. And I feel like after that one, it's like, we're gonna be able to make a bunch of these. Like
no, exactly.
No, those are good examples. I always think of Skyfall. Like Sam Mendes always says, like, hey, like I put everything. That's the James Bond movie I wanted to make.
Right.
And then you could tell with Spectre, it was a money thing where it was like, hey, it was like, it's clear you put everything in Skyfall, because this one is not, So I always appreciate when creators sort of like swing for the fences for things. I think comics, especially now, needs stories like that, and I think you guys are a great pair. But talking about that, will there be more Fans Best? Have you guys thought about like expanding this initial like run, or maybe possibly exploring different avenues of telling this story?
It's funny, I personally never think about follow-ups until everything comes in, until and I think it's primarily because I just want to leave everything on the table and just go full out. And then usually what happens, if the fan response is there, then I'm kind of like, well, we could do this, we could do that, and da 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 da. Like, I feel like go ahead.
I feel like I still actually haven't read issue 5. I haven't got the issue 5 script yet.
You still haven't got the script yet. All right, we'll talk about that.
I still haven't got the script yet.
All right, good to know. Good to know.
But from the outline that I saw a long time ago, I feel like this story ends, but like the characters, like there's still a life for them to live, and like a thing going forward. So I feel like there's the potential for it. I don't know how much of a say we have in
That's a good point.
whether that happens. I think there's other things depending, but it feels like there's. I feel like it's actually like a good position, because I feel like some things like they sort of end where it's like the story's over, that character's arc is over, there's nothing left. And then they make a sequel and it's just like, we're gonna make the exact same movie again. They forgot everything that they learned in that first movie, they're just gonna do it again. And I feel like this story ends up in a place that's like a bit different, where it's sort of like going in a different direction. And I think, I don't know, maybe I'll read issue 5 and be like, oh no, it's done. But I feel like there's like potential for like these animals to keep going and keep having like different adventures in different places.
Yeah, and then
yeah,
Pornsak could do his dark and depressing one next.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah.
Go back to his old bag of tricks.
It's funny because I realized I said yes to a story, which I'm not going to give specifics, but I said yes to writing a short story for someone, and I'm like, why did I get nothing out of that? Like, I don't even understand why I said yes to this project,
Yeah.
and I think I literally just said yes to it just because like I need to write something dark and depressing because I've written something light for so long.
Speaking of dark and depressing things, I know you posted a script for an adaptation
Oh,
for the Good Asian. Can you
yeah.
talk to us a little bit about that? Because I'm definitely
Uh,
excited.
So yeah, I mean, like I am working with MRC, MRC, which is the studio that did Ozark, Atomic Monster, which is James Wan's production company, 3 Arts, which is the management company that I work with, and we're working with adapting it for TV, with MRC, and yeah, and we'll see how that process goes. And eventually, we will get to a point where everyone's been fantastic to work with. They're very keen to staying loyal to the book. And yeah, I'm adapting it for television, and we'll see how that goes. Eventually we'll get a script together, we'll get a package together, we'll take it out to buyers and all that kind of stuff, which will probably happen. It's 2024 now, so it'll happen this year. And we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's there's not that much specifics to give about it, other than what I've already said publicly. But everyone on board has been fat.
I really hope it becomes a TV show. So my girlfriend and her family, they immigrated from China to Hawaii, and
Okay.
so my girlfriend is like first generation American.
Got it.
And she doesn't read comics, but she loves TV shows. And I was telling her about this comic and like, hey, it's really great. And like, there's certain words I know you use that they use in the comic book. And she's like, oh, that's cool. I'm not going to read it. And I'm like, well,
Too bad it's a comic.
Now I'm like, okay, well, hey, it's it might become a TV show. You're gonna really like it because like shows like Warrior or things like in Chinatown in like San Francisco or New York. She's like, I love those shows, and her brother loves those shows. So now I'm really excited because like this is a part of like my world that is really a bigger part of their world. That I can be like, hey, you shared this with me and I loved it, and I get to read a comic book about it, and now there's a TV show about it that's like about your stuff. But I love the comic book, and it's just going to be a really good time where I can be like, hey guys, like you're a doctor, you're like a chief financial officer at your company, but we can have this time once a week where we come together and we can watch this show because we all love the content, and it'll be a good time. So I'm super excited about the show because it's gonna be a really good family time for all of us together.
Thank you, man. Fingers crossed. We'll see how we. I mean, like I've been working in TV long enough that I don't ever take anything for. It's funny. I remember once, and this isn't a TV thing, but I remember once I was working at Vertigo, and an assistant editor at the time, came to me. Actually, I could probably say names. It was Mark Doyle. Mark Doyle, because he's done well for himself. Publisher of IDW. But I remember he just had his first book greenlit. And he's just kind of like, when do I get to be excited about this? I want to know. And it's like, when it's shrink wrap and sitting on your lap, that is when you get to be excited. Anytime before that, it could die. So like, don't get excited until it's shrink wrapped and sitting on your lap. And I feel like television is kind of and now it's even crazier because now it'll go out and it'll just disappear. It'll be on a streamer for a month. It'll just disappear as if it never existed. So I don't know when you get excited about television. When like you get excited when you're taking it through your eyeballs, and the second it's no longer in front of your eyeballs, you have to worry about it again.
I feel like that's sort of one of the weird things being like inside producing stuff. It's like, no, there's no time to be excited. Like like right now, like the book's going to be coming out, and I'm going to be like grinding to finish issue 5. Like like it's just sort of like, oh yeah, great. Like but like I feel like finding those moments to be like it's here is sort of weird. It's like
I mean,
I find it hard.
Yeah, this sounds really cheesy. I don't know if Jesse can relate because of like the emotional toil and the toil I put him through, the physical and emotional toil I put him through. But it's a really cheesy answer. But I do really like the work. So like the moments I get to enjoy or the moments when I get to work, anything outside of that, it gets ephemeral very quickly.
You get tired of those meetings, sort of about meetings, about the other meetings.
I get to miss those, fortunately. I'm like, I'm just drawing, and they're like, okay. But
Yeah,
yeah,
like for me, like I like the physical process of writing, and I like working with people. So like everything outside of that, and don't get me wrong, I like it when people like the work. That's cool too. So like that's fun. But like but outside of those things, like it gets very ephemeral very quickly. Like doing Man's Best, I like writing the pages. I like getting a chance to talk to Jesse. I'm not
yeah,
going to have this option when we're no longer working together. We're working together. We won't be talking, or not that we'll never talk again, but we won't be talking like every other week the way we do.
yeah,
It's a nice luxury to have. Those are the things I enjoy. And then everything else after that, it gets a little, oh, I got to deal with this. Oh, they said they do that, and then they
yeah,
didn't.
yeah.
And like, and they keep saying they're going to do this and they still don't. And I got to follow up with this and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So,
there's all the marketing stuff as well. It's like, no, you got to post about it. And I'm like, again? Like, like I thought I posted about it like last week, and they're like, yeah, try every day. And I'm like, every day?
Oh man, I hate doing that too. Like I do music production and stuff outside
Okay.
of here, and there's some stuff where I'm like, yeah, there is a new song out, but I don't want to. I feel like 20 minutes of doing social media work is like 2 hours worth of my
I
energy,
know.
and I'm
I
like,
know.
can I just please just tell someone to go listen to this and we'll call it good? But like I know that's why there's social media managers who thrive off that stuff,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of amount of artists that I feel are introverted until they're around
Yeah.
other artists. Because like if either of you are introverted, I would be like, guys, you're more extroverted than I am at the moment. I would have no clue. But it's because we're so in love with the work that we're doing. We're so focused on that process of that journey. That's like your favorite aspect of it.
Yeah,
And when it's finished, it's like, okay, now I have to do the other work that I don't
Yeah.
consider work. That's like, oh, I kind of don't like doing this stuff.
yeah. No, the sitting down and drawing for me is the best part. Like this morning, like the scanning, not super exciting. Like the resizing the files onto the page template, like doing the double page spread because I had to scan it in 2 pieces. Like I'm like, yeah, I could use an intern for this. But like,
Oh, that's awesome. But hopefully, this was a good part of the work. I really
yeah,
want to thank you guys
Yeah.
for coming
Yeah,
on.
thank
It's
you
been
so
a
much.
great conversation. But when's FOC for Man's Best, and where can people find you?
Okay, so FOPC for Man's Best is 2/26. We were told they pushed it back a little bit to give more people time to order because I think we're doing comics. I don't know if that's public. We're doing comics, bro. The week
yeah.
before, and then
We got to figure that out.
we really have to
we
figure
got
that
to-
out. We really have to figure that out. And the book comes out March 20th. I am real_Pornsak on Twitter, real_Psac on Instagram, and Pornsak on Blue Sky. I found a way to make it completely completely more laborious than it needs to be. But there you go. Those are my 3 socials.
I think you have a name that searches itself. I don't think there's a lot. I feel confident. Like if you just type in Jesse Lonergan, like you'll find me. There's also like an Australian rules football player, but he's retired. I think I've passed him. He was ahead of me for a while. But I think
Listen, when you draw dogs, you're a popular guy.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you
So
go.
I think you're at the top of those Google searches outside of obviously the amazing work you've done. But again, thank you guys. I'm really excited to actually read the book and see how uplifting it is versus the dark and depressing things we know you for.
Fingers crossed.
So thank you. And with that, Badaboom.
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 Awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Badaboom podcast. Keep the conversation going with Chris and I on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. You can find us on all these places at Badaboom Podcast. Get into the comments on our YouTube channel. Let us know what you like about the show or what you'd like to hear from us in the future. Until next time, please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Thanks for listening.